Well, it's an honor to be here at Centennial Hall, working for K2. I want to give a really great thanks to our star producer, Ms. Grace Elliott, over there by the door, putting the show together. And the whole staff of K2, Jamie Waste, Jeff Brown, Susan Fitzgerald, Katie Helt. And can I hear it one time for Fort James playing the bass? And how about for Alan Wicks on the drums? And Mr. Steve Nelson on the keys playing for you. My name's Justin Smith, and we got Doc Washington in the house, all the way here from Phoenix to sing for you. And stick around, folks, because we're playing all night. Here we go. Well, it's an honor to be here at Centennial Hall, working for K2. I want to give a really great thanks to our star producer, Ms. Grace Elliott, over there by the door, putting the show together. And the whole staff of K2, Jamie Waste, Jeff Brown, Susan Fitzgerald, Katie Helt. And can I hear it one time for Fort James playing the bass? And how about for Alan Wicks on the drums? And Mr. Steve Nelson on the keys playing for you. My name's Justin Smith, and we got Doc Washington in the house, all the way here from Phoenix to sing for you. And stick around, folks, because we're playing all night. Here we go. Well, it's an honor to be here at Centennial Hall, working for K2. I want to give a really great thanks to our star producer, Ms. Grace Elliott, over there by the door, putting the show together. And the whole staff of K2, Jamie Waste, Jeff Brown, Susan Fitzgerald, Katie Helt. And can I hear it one time for Fort James playing the bass? And how about for Alan Wicks on the drums? And Mr. Steve Nelson on the keys playing for you. My name's Justin Smith, and we got Doc Washington in the house, all the way here from Phoenix to sing for you. And stick around, folks, because we're playing all night. Here we go.
Good evening and welcome to our first community town hall focusing on school start times. I'm Sven Gustafson. I am the Chief Academic Officer for the Anchorage School District, and we are here this evening. This is our first. We have tonight, we have tomorrow at South High School, and Friday at Mirror Lake Middle School. We're here to gather information, let people know about the studies that have been made about school start times, hear from the community, hear from you parents and community members. We do have this live stream, so we're hopeful that many people are tuning in to our presentation this evening. In the room with us this evening, we have Dr. Bryant, our superintendent. We have Mr. Carl Jacobs, our vice president of our school board, and member Kelly Lessons of their school board as well in the room. This evening, we're going to focus mostly on start times. We will then also have a couple slides and talk about a thing called professional learning communities, which is a PLC time that we're proposing to the school board as well. And then we'll have time for you all to make comments to us, and then we have a survey at the end that we'd hope that everybody that is here and that is online will participate in over the next couple days. So going through our start time presentation is Shannon Bingham. He is with Western Demographics, and he is our consultant and professional that has all the information about school start time. So welcome, Shannon.
Thank you, Sven. Can everyone hear me? Very good. Well, it's a privilege to talk to everybody tonight about school start times. I have quite a history with Anchorage School District. I have helped with various special projects for about the last 6 years. We did a school start time exploration back in 2018, and you'll hear some reference to some of our history associated with that project as well. Our intention tonight is to give you a brief overview of the history of school start time exploration in the Anchorage School District, a little bit of an overview of some of the current research on the topic. We'll give you a perspective on a longitudinal study that was conducted that showed before and after student wellness and student performance issues. And then we will talk a little bit about the PLC, or professional learning community concept, and how that might affect our start times. And then we will pause for questions. We have several microphones in the room that we will bring forward in order to facilitate live questions. It's our intention to be as complete as possible. We have a lot of professionals in the room that can help answer any question that you might have. Questions and comments will be limited to about 3 minutes. So MJ will be running a timer over there, and he will ask folks to wrap up as you make a comment or ask a question, and then we'll do our best to respond. So with that, I'll go ahead and launch into the presentation. So you can see that we have quite a history. We have had some professionals come in and address us. Dr. Lisa Meltzer is probably one of two of the leading sleep researchers in North America. She is currently in private practice, was with the National Jewish Hospital Network for almost 20 years, and is one of the most prolific researchers on this topic. We've also had information supplied to the district by Dr. Kyla Wallstrom from the University of Minnesota, who is also kind of the other leading national researcher on this topic. So between the two of them, we have had quite a bit of information provided to us that has assisted us with exploring this role. I seem to have advanced about 15 slides, so let me see if I can get myself back to where I intended to be. There we go. So since about 2014, that was kind of the high watermark for districts converting to alternative school start times. So since then, a lot of districts have continued to convert to later start times, especially for secondary school children. In 2014, the American Academy of Pediatricians issued a position paper suggesting that secondary students, meaning middle and high school students, not start school before 8:30. And that initiated a lot of start time change around the country. And I think a couple of states actually made it state law. California in particular made it a state law that secondary school students not start until 8:30. So that's been one of the main catalysts for a lot of change. A lot of research was initiated by that position paper, and a lot of it had been happening since about 2010, meaning a lot of research was being published on how students are affected by not getting adequate sleep. A lot of the research has really been very much based on, do children get enough sleep? And for the most part, elementary school students are supposed to get a little over 10 hours sleep a night. Middle school students are supposed to get a little over 9 hours sleep a night, and high school students are supposed to get a little over 8 hours sleep a night. When they do not get adequate sleep, they tend to have a variety of student performance, student wellness, and behavioral issues that affect their time in school and basically affect big chunks of their lives. And so a lot of the research has been focused on measuring self-reported fatigue on the part of students, of reporting attendance and graduation rate issues, various wellness issues associated with health clinic visits, other issues associated with various emotional issues, and also traffic accidents have been one of the big indicators for high school students. There's been quite a bit of research by the RAND Corporation, which is a national insurance underwriting agency that did a national study establishing that there would be a significant improvement in student safety and in costs associated with hospital bills for children that were severely injured in traffic accidents if they were to go to later start times. And we got a lot of those sleepy teenage drivers off the road. Other county governments have also done research on traffic accidents, and one of the longitudinal studies that I'll observe in a moment also had a county sheriff's department do a before and after measurement. There is opposition research on this topic. So what we're proposing to do is, for the most part, to pull the secondary students later in the morning. So they would go to having a later start time. Both high school and middle school students would start later. And because we have three-tiered transportation, meaning like most other districts in the United States, we only have enough buses and enough drivers to service one school level at a time. So in Anchorage, we have a three-tiered transportation schedule. So we use the buses and the drivers for senior high, then we use the buses and drivers for middle school, then we use them for elementary. And our window, because of our climate, snow, ice, problems that we have getting folks around, is 45 minutes between school starts. So what's called the window, the amount of time in the morning and in the afternoon for release for Anchorage School District, is about an hour and a half if you measure the time between the senior high start and the elementary start, or if you tack on the 45 minutes when the buses are running to deliver the senior high students to school, it's about 2 hours and 15. So a lot of the districts that have been successful in mitigating and making changes that would be what's called research compliant with their start times, they have addressed some of their transportation challenges by purchasing more buses, hiring more drivers, and trying to do what's called compressing the window. Now, because of our snowy conditions, that will be difficult for us without spending a significant amount of money. Other districts have a similar time problem that we do, but for different reasons. So a lot of the districts in central and northern Minnesota that made start time changes, a lot of their changes were also impacted by snow and ice and wintertime driving conditions, but also other districts that have made changes have had just about the same magnitude of challenge as a result of traffic. So some of the districts that have made big changes, like Seattle, were trying to compress that window in the morning, and they found that traffic was just as big a constraint as snow and ice. So that's been one of the things that has really been an issue, is districts realizing that if they want to make a difference, they're going to have to make some adjustments to transportation, or they're going to have to be relatively creative. There is opposition research on all three levels. So for high school and middle school, there is research out there that says the benefits to making a change are not justified by what it costs to make those changes. And then at the elementary level, most districts, because they have this three-tiered transportation system, wind up putting elementary in the starting position or in the second position. And some districts have, or some research agencies have gone through and said, we believe that elementary kids aren't morning people either. And they have published research that establishes that there may be some impacts there. However, because most elementary children go to bed early, 7:30, 7:45, what have you, the research demonstrates that those children get up early in the morning, and they start the energetic part of their day right at the start of the day. So we've done quite a bit of anecdotal focus group work with our teachers and our principals that say a lot of these elementary children are very energetic starting at 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and then by about 1:30 in the afternoon, they begin to lose some of their energy, and they become a little bit more sluggish, and it becomes more difficult for them to learn. Quite a few of the significant researchers have also explored this. It's not as easy to measure, but Kyla Wallstrom, one of the senior research people, has also explored that and found that there is demonstrable proof that the elementary child's learning window is earlier than the secondary child's learning window. So just to talk about a little bit about this, let's see here. Other pros and cons. There are some benefits from sleep time changes where we push high school students and middle school students later, associated with less depression indicators, especially post-pandemic. A lot of us are really concerned about the wellness of our students, and so what we have found in districts that have had significant start time changes that were research compliant, meaning the secondary children start later, the elementary children start earlier, they've found less depression symptoms, less school day fatigue, less tobacco and junk food usage, and children just basically making better decisions in general. We've also detected a lot of school climate and family climate benefits where adolescent children become easier to get along with when they have had enough sleep. And we've heard anecdotal evidence time and time again where family climate has been significantly improved by a change in school start time. Now, a lot of the opposition research has said that children just cheat. They know that when they don't have to go to school in the morning until later, they're going to stay up later. And what we're finding is that's not happening. Because of circadian rhythm, children get into a certain body rhythm, regardless of the age category that students are in. Elementary school students have a circadian rhythm for their age category. Middle school students have one, and high school students have one. And time again, we have demonstrated anecdotals that secondary children don't goof around in the morning. They tend to get up and get on with what they need to do. And because they know that they need to get to school and they have the opportunity to sleep later, they're getting the sleep. Most of the research studies that have been published since 2014, where districts went to a later start time for their secondary students, were able to prove that those children were getting 30 to 75 minutes more sleep than they were previously, and it was having a significant health benefit. Other cons, obviously in Alaska, this is a drastically different environment. We do not have local research for our latitude, and that's a flaw in the research. We have Minnesota research. We have a lot of work that was done to address the needs of children who swim or play hockey, and what are the effects of trying to take advantage of morning ice time and morning pool time. Other studies that have been done in northwestern Washington and other areas that are somewhat weather impacted and daylight impacted, but nothing as relevant as if a study had been done in Anchorage or Fairbanks. And we acknowledge that that's a failing of the research because we have a lot of periods between November and late February where we have a lot of darkness here, and that has effects on children that is probably independent of school start time. Other pros and cons you can read there. A lot of military parents have said that morning time they have with their elementary children is their quality time. And so we've heard anecdotals to that effect, that for military families that work well into the early evening, they are butted right up against when their child goes to bed. So if you have one spouse that is on that kind of a military schedule, a lot of those families have said that morning time is when I visit with my elementary school child. So that's been another anecdotal that we've heard on the con side. Staff work schedules. The school start times that are in place here in Anchorage have been here for 20 or 25 years. We've been on this schedule. And a lot of folks have really gotten used to that. A lot of people's employment patterns are linked to that. It's difficult to make a living as a school teacher, and we know that people have creative employment structures that they have worked very hard to establish, and school start time changes will have the effect of affecting everybody in the community. So as we think about a change of this magnitude, we have to think in terms of the effect of working families in every age category and what are the benefits. Other things, a part of the reason why this has become such a critical issue nationally is we're coming out of a pandemic with children that are having, quite frankly, a lot of wellness issues. And a lot of districts are searching for something that they can do to give kids an edge and give kids back some of what they've lost. And so a lot of the issue associated with Would a start time change, would the benefit that high school students and middle school students would see from that be valuable and help heal some of the damage that they've incurred as a result of the pandemic? Would that be worth it? And so a lot of districts are answering that question affirmatively, and that has incited a lot of exploration of this issue. Other people on the con side of that argument would say we've been through so much change as a result of the pandemic, don't change anything else, okay? So that's another point of view that we have to respect as we consider these issues. Here's a chronology of where we've been. There was a petition circulated and signed by a large number of high school students in late 2016, early 2017. The board picked up the issue. I ran about 45 focus groups, open houses, and town halls, similar to what we're doing tonight, or focusing on small groups of pediatricians, child care providers, teachers at all levels. We have done quite a bit of that already. We've had 6 meetings, focus group meetings with elementary, middle, and high school teachers. We've had, actually 9, I think. We've had 6 meetings with principals at all 3 levels. Most of the preliminary results on their preferences are affirmative for making some sort of a research compliant change. We met with the student advisory group this morning, and so we're listening very hard to middle and high school students. We will be meeting with all of our transportation providers, whether they're bus drivers, schedulers, traffic engineers. We'll be meeting later this week with our police officers, our school resource officers, and other security and law enforcement folks to understand their perspectives as well. As we went through that process, we finally made a recommendation to change high school to an 8 a.m. start from 7:30. Elementary was pulled into second position at 8:45, and middle school was placed at 9:30. And our academic day is 6.5 hours. Now, we just came off on March 9th from an extended academic day because of Snowmageddon. And so now we're back to our 6.5 hour academic day. So any of these start times that you look at, you can add 6.5 hours to that in order to understand the length of the academic day. So up at the top there, you see our current schedule, which is high school, middle school, elementary, which is kind of backwards from what the research is saying our start order should be. And so the scenarios that you see try to tweak the start order or push back the start time in order to give children some sort of research compliant relief. So our first scenario that was considered back in 2018 was to put elementary in first position, middle school second, and high school last, in order to get as research compliant as we possibly could. So that 7:30 start for elementary school students was troubling for a lot of families because of cold and darkness, and the idea that children weren't very well equipped to deal with that time of day, even though it's the time at which the alert part of their academic day begins. But that was the first scenario that we considered. Scenario 2, we pushed that back 15 minutes, stayed with the same research compliant start order, and you see the little smiley faces over on the right that indicate research compliant. Scenario 3, we reversed high school and middle school because we were getting a lot of concern from high school students who were in sports, extracurricular activities, had an after-school job, or had responsibility for a younger sibling that they were to pick up from school and provide childcare for. And so their concern was that I don't have enough afternoon, and you're leaving me a gap where my little sister is unsupervised for 45 minutes. So that was one of the concerns that was noted there. And we were looking at trying to narrow that gap as much as possible. And that third scenario was actually research compliant and put elementary school in that 7:45 start range. Now you're seeing that hour-and-a-half window between the first start and the last start. And one of the things that we're exploring with our transportation department is, can we narrow that a little bit? Now, Snowmageddon kind of proved that maybe it should be an hour between starts. And if you saw Northern Lights neck down to two lanes, one each way, you understand what can happen to us in the middle of the winter with driving conditions. But we're trying to explore, can we do what Seattle did? Seattle narrowed their window to an hour. And so a lot of the districts that have been able to satisfy as many parties as possible and do something that was still research compliant narrowed their window almost to an hour. We know we probably can't do that here, but can we do it somewhat? So that's one of the questions that we want to ask. Here are some of the pros and cons for these various issues. There was a latchkey concern for middle school kids not having supervision in the morning if a parent had to go off to work and they were there until 9:15 or 9:30 when their school day would start. And so a lot of the districts that wound up putting middle school in last position funded a proctored morning study hall for middle school children, where they would go to middle school early, they would go to the library, the cafeteria, they would sit down for 45 minutes and do their homework or work on extra projects or do something to that effect, and there would be someone in the room to supervise. So quite a few districts have used that as a tool to address the needs of middle school children to not be as off trend from a start standpoint in districts that had a wide window of starts in the morning. There are other pros and cons there for these first three scenarios that you see. Then we came up with some compromises. Again, this is back in 2018, and you can see scenario 4 there, where we went to a high school, elementary, middle start order and pushed high school back to 8 o'clock. And that had the effect with elementary kids coming in at 8:45, they went earlier. So they went earlier in their power band, but not way early, but they got into more of the alert part of their day. The high school kids pushed back more into the alert part of their day, and the middle school students followed at 9:30. So you can see that there were some benefits there. If you look at the end time for 2:30 for high school kids and the end time for elementary at 3:15, there's 45 minutes to go pick up your little brother if you're a high school student with a car who's responsible and is able to take care of younger siblings. So that was considered to be desirable. The issue with that is that it wasn't terribly research compliant for high school students, and we were only giving them a 30-minute benefit. So that was one of the issues for the board at that time, was this concept of, is that enough benefit to justify making a change? Scenario 5 was a research compliant variant that we proposed, where we pulled elementary into first position and got them right in the front end of the school day, right in the middle of their power band based on their physiology. But some of the concerns there were that in schools where we already have a lot of children unable to get to school on time, that might exacerbate that. So that's another concern, is that for communities where children have a hard time getting to school on time, if we go earlier, would that worsen that situation? So that's something that we have to very much pay attention to, is the capacity of parents to do what their kids need. And if we make this kind of change, are they able to adapt? Are they able to continue to serve their children? And are they able to get kids to school on time? But that was a fallback order, and you can see the two smiley faces over there, so both the high school and middle school start would be research compliant. All of these could be benefited by compression of the start window. And if we were to compress that start window, we would be more likely to be late, but we would be less likely to have buses waiting at a school after they drop for 15 minutes because they've run their route early. And so we're trying to see if there's some sort of a sweet spot where we can manage lateness on bad weather days without that being counterproductive and still allow some compression of the window that is more efficient and gets kids to school in a more efficient manner where we might be able to realize some of the benefits of changing the start order. Castles. This is a longitudinal study that was done in Cherry Creek School District, suburban Denver. Heavily traffic impacted district. Not snow country. It snows there, but nothing like here. There's not that kind of darkness there that there is here. But there is some of the worst traffic in the Mountain States in that community. And it has a bearing on their ability to get kids to school. So they made a bunch of changes. They really believed in the idea of trying to do something research compliant. And they hired Lisa Meltzer and Kyla Wallstrom to do a longitudinal study as they went along. What they found was when they went to a start order that was research compliant, that the elementary children did not get, they got 1 minute less sleep a night. So there was no real negative impact to elementary children by sliding into the first position. The middle school children got a whopping 29 minutes more sleep a night, and the high school students got 45 minutes more sleep a night. And from a percentage basis of the number of students in the secondary level that got the recommended amount of sleep for their age category, 1 in 5 middle school students did, and 1 in 3 high school students did. So there were big wins. A lot of the folks that said those kids are just going to goof around in the morning, they're not going to get that rest, were dead wrong. And those children slept until they had to get up and get moving. They got to school. We didn't really have a rash of tardiness. And this was one of the more successful school start time changes, although this district did have to throw a lot of money at transportation, and they made their change right in the dead center of the school bus driver crisis nationally, where we have become very challenged in our ability to hire school bus drivers. Other things that happened there at the elementary level, as far as children reporting wellness indicators, sad, nervous, worried, tired, sleepy. The elementary numbers per 1,000 stayed about the same. Not more than 20 children out of 1,000 reported being worse off at the elementary level. At the middle school level, 1 in 10 or 1 in 15 were reporting being better. And at the high school level, 1 in 5 were less likely to cite one of these issues as being something that was part of their academic day. As far as improvements first period, and there were other student performance issues, I'm just focusing on first period here because this is where I noticed students struggling the most. At the middle school level, most of the indicators improved 4 to 8%, and at the high school level, most indicators improved 11 to 17% from a student performance standpoint. And that leaked on into second period and overall academic performance for both age ranges of children. Regarding athletics at the middle school level, we did have some impacts. So about 8% of middle school students participating in extracurriculars or sports after school said they were less able to do so. And that was concentrated on girls, quite frankly. So young women saw some impact. 1 in 5 said that they had, or I'm sorry, 1 in 10 said that they had some sort of an impact as far as their ability to do everything they wanted to do after school. For young men, We had better performance. At the high school level, only 2% of students cited an impact in their extracurricular or their sports goals for what they wanted to do after school. Activities was less impacted. Employment, we actually had 7% of high school students more likely to have a job because they were more well rested. And we did a little bit of a study back in 2018 of the percentage of high school students who were employed in Anchorage versus, I think I did Boise, Spokane, Eugene, Tacoma, Bellingham, and about the same percentage of children were employed in those 5 or 6 communities that I thought were somewhat comparable. We don't have more student employees here. We have a high percentage of kids that are contributing to their family income, and we have to respect what a lot of these young men and women are saying are things that are important to them and how much after-school time that they have. You can see other improvements there in grades and other things. So that's our presentation on school start times. We'd like to make a brief presentation on the professional learning community concept, which is a late start Monday option that has some impact on start times. And I am going to ask Eric Viste to present on that topic.
Thanks, Shannon.
The big one. The big one, yep.
All right, thank you. Eric Viste, Senior Director for Elementary Ed, and here to talk about professional learning communities. And I'll give you a little bit of an overview on professional learning communities. We brought this to the school board work session yesterday as a proposal for next school year in yesterday's work session. Basically, what a professional learning community is it's a model of professional development for all staff. What the recommendation is from us would be a 60-minute late start at every level. The professional learning communities are a data-driven process by which teachers, educators, specialists, paraprofessionals are working together to look at and solve student learning outcome problems and using collaboration, teaming, and cohesion to be able to solve those problems and improve our student practices. What it would do, it would be a weekly and ongoing professional development model. One of the constraints that we currently have is the ability to have that consistent and ongoing professional development for all of our staff. What this would do, it would provide an opportunity for all of our teachers to be working together more consistently. In order to do that, what we want to do is offer a dedicated time on a consistent basis throughout the year at the high school level, at the middle school level, and at the elementary level. Currently, we do have a PLC model at high schools. It is a 45-minute period. What would change is it would go to a 60-minute period, and it would be a late student start at that time. At the middle school model, it would be similar. It would be a 60-minute late start, and at the elementary level, it would be a 60-minute late start. It would fall only on Mondays, and it would be starting from the beginning of the fall 2024 all the way through the end of the school year. It really would allow us to focus on our major initiatives, everything from college and career life readiness to our curriculum implementations, our mental health of our students, our social emotional learning, our multi-tiered systems of support. Essentially, every initiative that we have would allow us to move the needle for students. The evidence and body base and research behind that supports it. We do have friends nearby. The Matsu Valley recently, actually this year, implemented a pretty similar model, and it's been, by reports that we've had, has been a successful model in the Matsu Valley. So it's something that we want, and we believe that would be a successful opportunity for our teachers, and in the end, for our students in the ASD. What we've done is we provided on the next slide, we've provided the scenarios of what that would look like on Monday. So in scenario 1, you can see our PLC start would basically be a 60-minute late start for students. The end times would stay the same in each of the scenarios that were provided by Shannon. In scenario 2, so elementary would start in scenario 2 at 8:45 for students. Middle school would start at 9:30, instead of 8:30, and high school would start at 10:15 instead of 9:15. And you move on to scenario 3 would be the same 60 minutes delayed start. Here in scenario 4, the same examples would happen. Instead of 8 o'clock, it would be 9 o'clock for high school, 9:45 for elementary, and 10:30 for middle school, with the same ending times that were outlined before.
Great. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. So one point to clarify, with the student late start, what would happen? What would happen would be buses would essentially run 60 minutes later for that time. So students would be coming to school later, buses would run later, and so just to be abundantly clear, it would be a full 60 minutes. Everything would dial back 60 minutes at the beginning of the day, whatever model that would be adopted.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Clicker. So we'd like to take a moment and respond to live questions. We have, so the survey is up in 4 languages right now. So we have 4 QR codes here, and if you can focus your camera on the QR code you would choose. English is in the upper left, Spanish is on the upper right. We have Korean on the lower left and Tagalog on the lower right. We have a Samoan survey and a Hmong survey that will be up on our website probably by Thursday. So if you would like to take the survey in those 2 languages, they will be available at that time. I will leave these up for a moment, and then I'll get the English survey up really larger. If you're unable to get this to scan into the camera application in your phone from the distance that you are in the audience, I will put up the bigger QR for folks that might be on the back row. At this time, we'd like to invite you to take the roughly 5 minutes it takes to take the survey and to consider coming forward and asking questions or making comments regarding this issue. We will record everything that is said and make sure that the board members who are not present tonight have access to your comments. We have one microphone ready over here. We have another microphone ready over there, and I'll just invite you to come up. We have a sign-up list, and I'll be able to call on people by name. And I'd like to call Marnie Eggleston up first. Marnie, are you available? Thank you. Okay.
So I wasn't sure if I would have a comment because I wanted to hear the presentation first, but they said just sign up, and so I will just make a comment. I think I first heard this information probably over 20 years ago, that it was important for high school students. That's way before I even had a family. I now have a kiddo in high school. I'm just excited that's even an option, a possibility that we would think about this, because I work in mental health, and knowing this all along, but watching high school start times get earlier and earlier, and knowing that, like in my case, my kids were always up at 6 o'clock. It didn't matter what time we went to bed. And my high school kids are going to sleep at like 11 o'clock midnight doing homework, and then they have to wake up by 5, 6 o'clock in the morning to do their activities. It just makes sense to flip that switch and put the little kids earlier, and if you're doing after care, or before school or after school care for little kids, it really is just a matter of buffing, creating more of a buffer after school. You're going to have to do childcare in 2 spots anyway. You might as well just double them up and put them at the end. And maybe that's simplistic, but even when my kids were in elementary school, we had to do early start, we had to do late care. It really doesn't matter if we just double it up at the bottom. Anyway, I'm just really excited for this. I think it's super beneficial. I hope that we do move to actually the second scenario where high school starts last.
Great. Thank you, Marnie. If you could make sure I get your contact information, I'd love to ask you some questions about your mental health experience with this as a professional. I'd like to call Leah Filippi next, please. Leah?
Yes, thank you. I also am very excited that the district is taking these issues back up, and I agree that a 9 o'clock start time does not serve our youngest students well. As you know, many little kids get up way before 9. Many elementary school aged students have parents who have to be at work before 9 and are paying for before care to cover that time slot anyway. And There are community partners who offer on-site care at many of our schools, including the school that my son attended when he was in elementary school, which was Government Hill. But that had a wait list, so that's not a full solution for everyone. My concern now that he's a 9th grader, of course, is high school start times. And as you know now, high school starts 4 days a week for us at West at 7:30. Our bus comes at 7:05, so he's got to be up and out before 7 to catch the bus at 7:05, and that's too early, frankly. He's a good kid, he's motivated, he's engaged, he likes school, he even likes his first period class, which is science, but he's tired. And we really have an opportunity here to make an enormously beneficial change for our community, and I hope that this time the board perceives how great the benefit to families would be, even if a particular age group's time slot were changed by as little as 30 minutes. I mean, 30 minutes for me would be 30 more minutes of sleep for my kid every night of the week, and that would be huge. One thing that I did not see presented in the scenarios from 2018, and I'm curious to know if the district is considering now, is reordering to put middle school first. And if you'll hear me out, the way I think of it is this. Nobody wants to go first, right? High schoolers don't want to go to school at 7 o'clock or 8 because it's early, and elementary school parents don't want their kids walking on dark streets at 7 o'clock in the morning. But just numerically, the number of kids which is fewest is middle school. Even when you move to the middle school switcheroo where the 6th graders join the 7th and 8th graders at all schools, it's 3 grades worth of kids. So if somebody's going to be screwed, why not make it the smallest number of people possible? Why not let the middle schoolers take the hit for those 3 years? I'm sorry, it's a big change to start middle school. It's a hard time to be an adolescent, but somebody's got to do it. If the concern for military families is they're not going to get to see their littlest kids at all if they go to school as early as 7:30, if the concern for high schoolers is that any time before 8:30 is too early, what I did not see in any of the 5 scenarios back in 2018 was putting middle school first. And I hope you'll give some thought to whether or not that would be a good compromise to solve some of these problems.
Great. Thank you, Leah. I've had scenarios that have that have basically run all of the viable options. And as we move forward into a conversation with the board regarding what would they like to zero in on, we'll certainly explore that. And I appreciate your comments. Carla Hollingsworth is next.
I have someone here who needs to leave. I'm going to give her my spot. And put my name at the end.
Okay, thank you, Carla. Please state your name so we'll know who.
Laura Herman, I did sign up, but I think I'm at the end of the list. I'll keep it short and sweet. Okay. I don't have any children, but I did go to the Anchorage School District from 6th grade through graduation in 12th grade from West High School. This was something that needed to happen. I'm 34 years old. It needed to happen when I was in school, and there's no reason that we should delay this at any time. I personally support scenario 2. High school students should be getting as much sleep as possible. The whole point of school is to set our kids up for success in the rest of their life, and currently we're setting them up for failure. So I really hope that a change is happening ASAP. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Laura. Carla, would you like to go ahead next? Yes, go ahead, Carla.
Thank you.
My name is Carla Kai Hollingsworth. I am a parent of a 9th grader as well as an ASD employee, and I fully support making a change in start times. I understand it's very complicated and that we need to try and minimize the impacts, the negative impacts. I think that the research shows that we can positively impact our children, and I concur with what the previous person said, that we're impacting them for their whole lives during intense times of change and growth. And what we can do to best support them, this community and the school district, I think needs to find ways to make that happen. My couple thoughts I had. One, perhaps we can provide some more childcare. I think you spoke to that for the elementary students where there's a gap. We could get creative about that. We already know that providing after-school tutoring can be really beneficial for students, and maybe that becomes more of a common thing rather than when we have certain kinds of funding or certain groups of people have access to federal funding to access that. Maybe we factor that into our structure. In terms of the giving time for the teachers to do their collaborative work together, I'm questioning whether or not Monday morning is the most optimal time for teachers to do that. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I didn't catch why that time was chosen. I know for me, Monday morning is kind of a scramble to get ready for the week, and so perhaps having people in their flow and then thinking about things and having something more in the middle of the week might be more effective. I don't know. And then the last thing I wanted to say is in terms of elementary school students, with military families not having as much access to their parents, I think that's actually incredibly significant. And I think that we need to make our schools very welcoming to parents, more welcoming than we currently do. And there's a lot of factors to that. But that could be one piece of a solution to that challenge, is to invite in a real way those families to be more participatory and have access to their children during the school day, which is not something that they perhaps currently have access to, and they've never had that access because of their work schedule. So that might actually be another benefit, that we could get more collaboration between parents and schools within those communities. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Carla. Lisa Alexia, next, please.
Hi, thank you for persisting with this issue. My name is Lisa Alexia. I'm a physician assistant. I'm also a mother of 2 teen boys, one of whom graduated last year, the other one is a sophomore. As a physician assistant in Alaska and a former community health practitioner, I've worked in a lot of different places in the state, and currently I work in mental health as in psychiatry. I think the start time issue in Alaska is complicated by the fact that our time zones are shifted so far and distorted so far. So if you look at a sundial, the times that high school students in Anchorage and Fairbanks are getting up to go to school are probably the most distorted in the nation, representing a rather extreme form of sleep deprivation for kids who are already biologically shifted, far more than the lower 48 research would suggest. So I think this is an extremely important thing to consider in pushing the times of start times later, and I think it would be worth considering that we need to push all of the times later. No one wants to see their elementary kids going to school in the dark, and that's a reasonable request. So I think all of that needs to come into consideration, and some of those are legislative issues beyond the scope of starting school later, such as eliminating daylight savings time and other issues. But the school start time is the place to start, because that's where we're here. As a physician assistant, I would say that the issue of circadian rhythms and sleep is what we're talking about, that sleep deprivation has tremendous impacts on mental health, on physical health, on the ability to learn, and this takes its worst toll in the form of suicide. And our rates of learning in Alaska, our rates of suicide, our rates of car accidents and unintentional injury are so high, and it's never been researched to see what is the impact of having such a distorted solar school start times, distorted really across the state. And I will say that one of my children did some research on this as a junior high school student and compiled a spreadsheet looking at what the solar equivalent school start times were in various districts throughout the state. And there's some incredible research opportunities there, but really the upshot of it, when you look at all the research about sleep deprivation and circadian rhythms and what we're dealing with in Alaska, I cannot imagine why we continue to torture our children this way. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. If you could be sure to leave your contact information with me, I'd like to interview you over the phone if I could as a PA to get your perspective further. Thank you. Irene Ball, followed by Mike Grunza, I think. Is Irene Ball still in the room? Oops, here she comes.
Well, that's definitely too tall.
That's up there, isn't it?
I'm just short. We all know that getting enough sleep is essential for both physical and mental well-being. Studies have consistently shown that most teenagers need between 8 and 10 hours of sleep each night, but the vast majority of high schools across the country start classes before 8 a.m. This means that teenage students are forced to wake up well before reasonable, often feeling groggy and disoriented as they drag themselves out of bed. I know this was something that was difficult for me as a student. And once teens arrive at school, they're expected to be alert and engaged for hours on end, even though their bodies need more sleep. That's why we do need to change school start times. By pushing the start of the school day to a more reasonable hour, we can give students the chance to get the best rest they need to be at their best. Research has shown that when schools have delayed their start times, students have seen a range of benefits. They report feeling more awake and alert in class and are better able to concentrate on their studies. Attendance rates have improved as have grades and test scores. And perhaps most importantly, students report feeling happier and more engaged with their learning. Of course, there will be some logistical challenges involved in making this change. One of my main concerns is regarding how families that rely on high school students providing childcare and having employment make it through. It's complicated, and we need to ensure we minimize negative impacts like those. Even so, the benefits are clear and support the better student outcomes that this district needs. Earlier start times for elementary students also eliminates the needs for families to pay for both before and after school programs, allowing parents like myself the ability to get to work after dropping our young children off at school, rather than dropping them off at a program an hour before school starts and paying, and then school ending, of course, before work, and having to pay again for an after-school program.
Sure.
That's all.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Irene. I guess we did some research back in the first study, and we found that the average child care bill in Anchorage ranged from $900 to $1,250 per month for families that were able to purchase wraparound care. So pretty significant. Mike, you're up. Thank you, sir.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Mike Grunst. I'm testifying on behalf of myself and don't represent the opinions of the Department of Defense of the U.S. military. I apologize. I've got another meeting going on in my ears right now with the House Education Committee. I'm here to testify in support of later start times for our students, and I want to commend the school district for looking at this and reinvestigating it. It is a shame that we wasted a perfectly good emergency to make drastic changes. Drastic changes are required. Our community, our state, our community of the state of Alaska is losing the 18 to 34-year-old young adults that we need at a record rate. We need to entice people to come into the state. We need to increase outcomes for our students and get these young professionals back up into Alaska and give them hope, all right? We know that this is a better way to provide the education that our kids need, so please, let's make the change. Let's get it done.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate your time. Well, that concludes our evening. I'd like to thank everybody. Was everyone able to take the survey? Was anybody struggling with the survey? There are plenty of folks in the room that can make sure that you were able to take the survey. There are all 4 QR codes if you need them again. And this information will be available on the web if you'd like to dive a little bit deeper into some of the material. And again, we're really grateful that so many of you have come out this evening to explore this issue. Does anybody have any other comments before we conclude our evening? Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, my name is Gretchen Moreland. I had a question that popped up while you were doing your presentation about not having opportunities for studies up here. But on Mondays, I know that there's a late start for high school by a half hour. And I'm wondering if there's been any sort of formal or informal survey of the teachers to evaluate how the students do on Mondays when they've had an extra half hour of sleep.
I've worked for almost 200 school districts, and I don't think I recall seeing any research that was focused on an academic research project on professional learning community activities, but I have heard anecdotally that a lot of the faculties believe because they're in that quality circle style environment, they're looking at every child and what those individual children need, that a lot of them believe that after they initiate a PCL process, that PLC process, that they feel they're better serving the children. And I think there have been a lot of anecdotal observations that children are doing better. I would defer to Eric Visti or Sven Gustafsson to talk a little bit about any actual research they may be aware of.
So thank you for that question, because that will get us to really be looking at like attendance rates and behavioral rates and success in the classes. And just as a qualitative thought about this, I was the principal of West High School for last year and then this year, and once on those Mondays we had less tardies, less absences. One of the questions came, why was Monday morning the time that we chose? The high schools chose that because it's the highest rate of attendance for even adults, and afternoons are a little scattered at some of our schools with activities and such. So Monday mornings actually work out very well because of that attendance piece. But thank you. We'll definitely be looking into that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I guess maybe I didn't ask the question properly. I'm sorry. I mean, are the students doing better on Mondays than the rest of the week?
That's what I was talking about. I understand your question, yeah. Because we do have that right now, 45 minutes later. And just qualitatively, on Mondays, yes. At West High School for the past year and a half when I was the principal there, it had less tardies, less attendance issues and so forth on Mondays.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All righty. Well, thanks again, everybody, for coming out this evening. We're grateful to you. Please be careful as you walk out. A lot of these sidewalks are pretty frozen solid and 3 inches thick, so be really careful as you walk out. And thanks again for coming. There will be 2 more of these, one Thursday night and one on Friday night. And we would invite you to come to another session if you'd like to hear some more of what other folks have to say. Thanks again, and everybody have a great evening.